Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Elrom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, the international community may allow Iran to continue weaponizing uranium. U.S. Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman, the head of the American delegation attending talks with Iran, told reporters last week that the hardline Islamic Republic may be permitted to retain some of its nuclear enrichment capabilities. Israel has repeatedly warned world powers that Iran's nuclear program is being developed to create weapons of mass destruction. Iran has threatened to wipe Israel off the map, a warning Israel has taken seriously. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appealed to the world powers to ensure that Iran's rogue nuclear program is completely halted by demanding a total cessation of uranium enrichment. But he says instead, Tehran is getting everything and giving nothing in return. Netanyahu stressed that we need to dismantle Iran's ability to manufacture and launch nuclear weapons. This has yet to be achieved, and without the persistence of world powers, it will not be achieved. I hope the international community will be firm in its efforts to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear threshold country.
The Knesset has officially passed the initial stages of legislation granting Christians separate representation in the government. This is a monumental step in dividing Arab Christians in Israel from the Muslim population, and while both groups are ethnically Arab, they clearly differ in belief, customs, and ideology. The Christian community has suffered persecution from the Muslim majority and has requested a separate standing so that their interests may be fairly represented in the government of Israel. The Knesset Advisory Committee for Equal Opportunity in Employment passed the first law providing Christians with individual status, proposed by member of Knesset Yariv Levin, who called the measure historic. According to Levin, who is a member of the influential Knesset Christian Allies Caucus, this is the first time that Christians will have such representation, and he vowed to soon expand the legislation so that the community will receive all that they deserve.
Last week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made headlines by becoming the first and only world leader to visit wounded Syrian refugees. Netanyahu traveled to northern Israel, where the Israeli army has created a field hospital specifically to treat the wounded from the Syrian civil war. His visit was praised by the Syrian opposition leader, who said that Netanyahu's public presence with the Syrian wounded sends an important message. The IDF field hospital has treated more than 700 Syrians since the war broke out nearly 3 years ago. The medical facility is equipped with a fully functioning emergency room, intensive care unit, and an operating room. It treats Syrian patients without bias and has saved the lives of many people. Netanyahu said that Israel's humanitarian efforts to treat the Syrian wounded highlights the difference between Jerusalem and Tehran, which supports the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and has helped to fuel the bloodshed in Syria.
The Knesset is set to deliberate Israeli policies regarding the Temple Mount in Jerusalem's Old City. Tensions have increased as Jews and Christians are demanding more frequent and regular visitation to the historic site. The groups maintain that their freedom of religion is being limited, and they want Israel to exercise sovereignty over the Temple Mount so that they can visit and pray there. The Muslim Waqf controls the area and heavily restricts visitation by members of other faiths. Even when permitted limited access, non-Muslims are forbidden to pray. On multiple occasions over recent weeks, Muslim leaders have enraged Arab youth by telling them that the infidels plan to gain control of the area, sparking violent riots that have left several Israeli police officers injured in clashes with Arab Muslims.
The propaganda campaign, dubbed Israeli Apartheid Week, was observed on college campuses throughout the United States and Europe last week. This attempt to poison the minds of the youth and to demonize the Jewish state was held to spread the lie that Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, is an apartheid state. According to the event's organizers, the goal was to spread the word about Israel and to strengthen the boycott and divestment movement against the Jewish state. Dr. Kenneth Meshuwe, a member of the parliament from South Africa who survived the actual apartheid regime, spoke publicly about the falsehood of the Israel apartheid analogy. He said Israel cannot be compared to apartheid in South Africa. Those who make the accusation expose their ignorance of what apartheid really is. He said as a black South African under apartheid, he could not vote, nor could he freely travel. No person of color could hold high government office. The races were strictly segregated. People of color had inferior hospitals, medical care, and education. Meshuwe went on to detail the racial and gender equality that exists in Israel. He said, "I am shocked by the false claim that the free, diverse, democratic state of Israel practices apartheid. This ridiculous accusation trivializes the word apartheid, minimizing and belittling the magnitude of the racism and suffering endured by South Africans of color."
Foreign and Arab media outlets are reporting that Israeli jets bombed a weapons shipment en route to the Hezbollah terror organization based in Lebanon. According to Al Arabiya, a moving convoy delivering ballistic missiles from Syria was completely destroyed. A Lebanese media outlet reported that a Hezbollah missile launching site was leveled and that several militants, including a Hezbollah field commander, were killed in the blast. Israeli officials have refused to comment on the reports, although an officer from the IDF Northern Command told Reuters that it has been known for some time that there are efforts to move serious weaponry from Syria into Lebanon.
Spewing rhetoric reminiscent of propaganda prominent in Nazi Germany, Hezbollah has broadcast a new anti-Semitic documentary. The short film, aired on Al-Manar TV, accuses Jews of controlling Hollywood and creating superheroes in order to take over the world. The show featured so-called expert testimony to the Jewish conspiracy of creating heroes, such as Superman, to first take over America and then the world. It quotes an Islamic professor as saying that the Jewish conspiracy of indoctrination through Hollywood movies is ruining us and ruining our culture through mass media, movies, and television.
An Israeli high-tech company has released a new application for smartphones that can help save people suffering from heart problems. Called CathMaps Plus, the company developed a technology that will provide vital emergency tools for cardiac patients by using GPS to provide them with directions to the nearest catheterization labs and give cardiologists fast access to secure medical histories in the crucial time after heart attacks. The Center for Disease Control estimates that 715,000 Americans suffer heart attacks each year. The creators of CathMaps hope that their application will shorten the response time for people using their program, as well as help to streamline the medical care that they receive during their recuperation.
Israel and Jordan have signed a 15-year natural gas export deal worth $500 million. The agreement has the potential to grow into a $30 billion partnership, making Israel the sole supplier of natural gas to the Hashemite Kingdom. Israel began pumping natural gas from an offshore deposit nearly a year ago. The Tamar natural gas reserve is said to hold about 8.5 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Israel has also discovered a larger reserve, which is estimated to hold 16 to 18 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, and the Israeli government voted to export 40% of the gas pumped from the offshore reserves. A senior official for one of the companies which brokered the Israel-Jordan gas deal said this agreement will pave the way for additional export projects, which could enhance regional cooperation, as well as provide additional supply to the domestic market and enhanced security of supply through development of additional reservoirs and infrastructures.
And that concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in yet another beautiful day on our rooftop studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Caroline Glick, the celebrated columnist from the Jerusalem Post and author of The Israeli Solution. Caroline, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here with you, Josh.
Well, the new book is coming out this week. It's very exciting. Tell us about what is the Israeli Solution.
The Israeli Solution is Israeli sovereignty over the West Bank of the Jordan, what we call here in Israel, Judea and Samaria. And what I do is I set out why the vaunted two-state solution that everybody seems to love so much has actually failed repeatedly for the past 90 years. And then I provide a 360-degree explanation of exactly how Israeli sovereignty would play out, why this would be better for Israel as well as for the Palestinians. And then finally, in the last part of the book, I look at how all of the relevant actors in the region will, including the Palestinians, will likely respond to this. And then finally, why is this good for Israel and why is this good for the United States of America? So it's really, an overall analysis of the situation where we are, where we could go that would be better, and why this would work. And I think that it's long past due.
It's exactly right. The land of Israel has been divided something like 22 times since 1911, and it's only led to death and destruction. Why do we keep going back to that solution?
Well, the old joke was that if the only tool you have in your toolbox is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. And I think that for the past century, really, since the end of the First World War, everybody keeps thinking that if they can just squeeze the Jews a little bit more, then the Arabs will come to the table. And so this whole idea of partitioning the land of Israel between Jews and Arabs goes back to this whole idea that, well, we don't want to do the hard work of actually understanding the Arabs and listening to them when they say that the problem is not the size of the Jewish state, but actually its existence, and that they won't accept it. If they can ignore that enough, then somehow or another it will go away. Well, 90 years later, here we are, where we are, with an impasse again in the peace talks and talk of a third Palestinian terrorist war against Israel just beginning now. And all of this was eminently foreseeable. In fact, anybody who's been looking at the situation for the past 20 years understands that this situation will never bring peace, and that if we want Israel and the Palestinians to be living in peace, it can only happen under Israeli sovereignty. Israel has the legal right under international law to apply its sovereignty to the areas. It has the moral right, the national right, the historic right. From a civil rights perspective, both for the Palestinians and for the Israelis, everything will be better and actually peaceful on the ground if we just follow through. And people who care about Palestinian rights know that for the first time ever, they will have full civil rights under the Israeli solution, something that they've never had before, and they certainly will never get under the PLO.
We've seen unprecedented pressure from Secretary of State Kerry. Why did the American administration think that a Palestinian state is in their best interest? We've seen the Palestinians are no friends to the Americans. They were celebrating during September 11th. So why creating another Muslim state in the land of the democratic state of Israel? Is that a good thing for the United States of America?
No, it's a really bad thing for the United States of America. And I devote several chapters of the book to explaining how the commitment of successive American administrations, really going back to Richard Nixon even, to this idea of partitioning the land, that this is some sort of going to be a panacea to what's going on in the Middle East, has dumbed down American foreign policy, made it very, very difficult, if not, as a practical matter, impossible for U.S. policymakers to understand the complexities of the Arab world, of the Islamic world, and really left American forces, for instance, deployed in the area, first in Lebanon in 1982 and then in Iraq in 2003, flying blind because they were seeing everything happening in this region through this prism of a misperception about the nature both of the Arab world and of the wider conflict of the Arab world with Israel. It's a very easy way out because, the two-state plan puts all the blame for the absence of peace precisely where it doesn't belong, on Israel, the only country in the Middle East that has been constantly stretching out its arm in peace with its neighbors since its inception, and in fact since the inception of modern Zionism 120 years ago. So, but by doing that, you don't have to think about anything else. If the Jews are responsible for everything, then you don't have to think about anything. And we see what happens when you enact policies that are based on not thinking. So this really I think could be the basis of a new American Middle East policy that could actually advance America's interests and enable American policymakers to really think through the realities of a situation before they jump into it to try to solve it all.
The effects of the so-called peace process have been catastrophic here. I mean, we left so many people injured, dead, violence all over the Middle East just because of this illusion of the importance of a Palestinian state. Yet today, something like 50% of Israelis would support a Palestinian state in the land of Israel. How do you explain that?
Well, because Israelis want peace, and it's not that 50% of Israelis want peace because, this is what we think. We say, look, if the Palestinians are willing to give us an offer where they will live at peace with Israel, where they will recognize Israel's historic and legal rights to the land of Israel and accept that Israel has to have defensible borders in order to continue to exist and base an agreement on such parameters, then any Israeli would be, silly not to give that serious consideration. The problem is that's never going to happen. And so, 50% of Israelis, if we were given such an offer, would seriously consider it and probably support it. But when you ask the same Israelis whether they think that's ever going to happen, you have 80% saying no. So, these polling questions are asked in order to shape political realities or perceptions in one way or another. But the full story is, yes, of course, Israelis have always been willing to make painful concessions to our neighbors in order to live at peace with them. It's just that none of our painful concessions that we've already made have brought us any closer to peace. To the contrary, they brought on massive war and terrorism that has slaughtered our people in the streets of this country.
Caroline, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
First of all, I want to thank you so much for caring about Israel and loving Israel. And I want to make sure that you understand that it's not just a moral position to take to support a strong Israel in the Middle East. It's also the wisest position that anybody can take if they want to bring about and advance the cause of peace, not only in the Holy Land, but also in the wider region. I encourage all of you to read my book, The Israeli Solution, a one-state plan for peace in the Middle East, because it really sets out chapter and verse why this is not only the moral stand to take, but also the wise standard to take, the intelligent stand to take, the stand that people take who think about this region in a very deep and serious way. So thank you again for your support for Israel, and God bless all of you from Jerusalem.
Thank you, Caroline, for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Josh.
And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
This is Jerusalem, Israel's capital city. It's an ancient and modern treasure that is beyond belief. There's a little bit of Israel in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Up next, Shining Light from Israel.
Anywhere else, this would be a vacation by a lake. But this is the Sea of Galilee. The wonders of Israel are beyond belief. There's a little bit of Israel in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
Time, we all have it, some more than others. Still, we all have it only 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. Time is like a river. It flows and it doesn't return. Today, that special block of time, today is the key that locks out yesterday's nightmares and unlocks tomorrow's dreams.
What about our time? We're at 24 hours in a day. How much of that time are we actually giving to the Lord?
Yeah, the funny thing about time is that it doesn't matter how much you think or you do not think about it, it just runs. It just keeps going. Your life, my life, their life. But that's the thing, that as young people we think that we have a lot of time.
We do. We have to be careful with the time. I mean, and the time actually belongs to God.
He has your days. Psalm 19:12. Our days are numbered. Or live your day as your days will be numbered, so you will gain wisdom. It's the same thing if I would tell you that you would die tomorrow. You will probably live your day tomorrow differently than today.
Definitely.
Now the question is why? Because your days are numbered. You realize that your time is up.
We often talk about tithing and so on when it comes to money, but what about our time? We're at 24 hours in a day. How much of that time are we actually giving to the Lord?
We are now in the Mount of Olives, and we are in the middle of the graveyard. All of them have a starting and end date. Now the interesting thing is that there's a small line in between, and that short small line is our lives. That's how it's in my opinion, it's a good image of how short our life is. It's a short line.
There's so much fun things to do, and young people want to have fun, so you go on vacation, you are out with your friends, you're not to think about the serious stuff.
For example, the summer tour, young people come from around the world and they give their time and their money, which they could spend on a vacation, but they decide to come to serve here in Israel, to give the society of Israel, or certain parts, their time and their love. So that's, I think, a good example for what young people can do to invest their time wisely.
So this morning we were at the Mount of Olives, looking at how the city of Jerusalem has been built in time. It took a certain amount of time to build the city of Jerusalem. The same way we were at the graveyard, where all the gravestones have a beginning and end date. I have a beginning date and I also have an end date. And that line in between those two dates is my life. And we went also to the shuk. So observe how people are living their daily lives and using their time and their decisions. And that's where they are at the moment. The place where I'm at the moment in my life comes in my time, and in what type of decisions do I do in my time. So with Arise, we want to encourage young people to live their lives for God, to use your time for the calling that God gave only for you. We're working here every single day to help the young generation, to encourage them to use their time and give them tools to make correct decisions to build the kingdom of God worldwide. So God bless you from here from Jerusalem, and I hope that you have an awesome day today and use your time for the kingdom of God.
Don't forget to visit our website, where you will be able to find the Arise Bay show and the Arise Now magazine, in addition to a lot of other interesting material. God bless you.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Elron.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.